Something feels weird. Feels like I'm being watched. I have a guest in the studio today. I'm being surrounded by my friend Richard Rhoden, and we are coming at you today to talk about George Orwell on this episode of Conversations with a Calvinist, which begins right now. Welcome back to Conversations with a Calvinist. My name is Keith Foskey, and I am a Calvinist. And today I am welcomed by my good friend and friend of the show, Richard Rhoden. How are you doing today, Richard?
Doing pretty good. You've come a long way with your little podcast here from years ago, a couple years ago, with the cartoon caricature of yourself as your graphic to now you got a studio and the whole 9 yards. So
yeah, I'm excited. And if you're listening to this and you're not watching it, you're only getting half the experience. So I do appreciate all my podcast listeners who actually go and listen. But today, especially, you have the opportunity of seeing this face on your screen. And I'm not pointing at myself. I'm pointing at Richard. You have the opportunity to see Richard here in studio with me. And today we're going to be talking about the subject of George Orwell. Now, if you're unfamiliar with George Orwell was an author who wrote a book that many of us had to read in high school that was called 1984. 1984 was a dystopian novel. It was written about a then future 1984 where the entire world would be under the thumb of what was known as Big Brother. Big Brother was the governing authority which had the ability and the power to see everything that a person did, was able to interact with everything that a person did, and was always looking out for anyone that had any opinions that did not line up with the party line. And it was a dystopian novel about the dangers of the lack of freedom and the lack of free thought, the lack of free speech. And there's many terms that came out of the book 1984, terms like newspeak, which is where they would take certain words and give them new definitions and therefore change the meaning of those words. And what Richard and I talked about, and the reason for today's program, and you'll notice his shirt. I'll have him sit back so you can. His shirt says "Make Orwell Fiction Again," because we believe that in a way Orwell sort of spoke with a prophetic voice. Now, when we say that, we are not saying that Orwell was a biblical prophet.
correct.
Everything he said was not inspired by God. But what we were saying is he had some insights that he was able to sort of look into the coming future and recognize some things that were dangerous. And the book that most people, again, know him for is 1984. But there's also another book that is called Animal Farm, which is actually my favorite non-Christian work. It is an allegory about the dangers of, really, I think it's about the dangers of communism. There's some who debate about what the meaning is behind that. But we're going to talk about Animal Farm a little later, but we're going to begin by talking about 1984. Now, Richard, I'm going to throw a question to you right away. You have read the book, correct?
I read it a couple years ago. I didn't read it in high school. I don't require it being reading in high school, but I did read it about 2.5 years ago, and right off the gate, I understood why everybody was talking about it at the time, because I think James White had mentioned it because he called it the left's playbook.
Yeah.
Ben Shapiro from the Daily Wire had mentioned it a couple times. Well, I need to read this book. So I read it, and he wrote it in 1949. He missed it by a few years, but it felt like he was talking about today, just with a slightly different terminology.
Absolutely.
But I have read the book, yes.
Yeah, and when I think about it, I think about a few years. I didn't read in high school either, because we went to the same high school.
Right.
For those who don't know, Richard is my friend from high school.
Yes. We had the same English class together that didn't require this reading. We
read
Shakespeare and Charles Dickens.
But we did go to the same school. Neither one of us had to read it in high school. I think the generation before ours, when I mention it, the 50 and older crowd usually say, yeah, we read that in high school. And the people that are our age in the 40s and younger didn't read it. And then, of course, modern young people don't even know what it is. Yes.
Right. When I wear this shirt out in public, the people that are in their 50s or older understand it.
Yeah.
The people who are our age and younger look at me with dull cow eyes, like, what does that even mean? And I have to spend 5 minutes explaining it.
The lady today, we went to the store on the way here, and he make
Orwell
she's
fiction
like
again.
Trying to figure it out. Now, my shirt is obviously understood by everyone because I'm a 5-point Calvinist, and I'm Keith Foskey, and I am a Calvinist. But this is becoming famous all around the world.
Yes.
The podcast is going strong all around the world, and it's because of you being willing to share and subscribe to the podcast. Okay, anyway, going back to the show. So, yeah, a lot of people, and what I find is young people have no idea what it is.
No.
Because you've got the older generation that had to read it, our generation that heard them talking about it, and then the younger generation, it's almost like it's been shielded. It's almost like the education system now is like, no, we don't want you to see this because this is too real. This is too close to what's actually happening. And some people would say, well, 1984 is a long time ago, but again, it was future from his perspective. He didn't know when it was going to land, but he had a feeling that this was going to land, and we feel like it did land right on our heads, and many of the things that the book talks about. And just to give you a quick overview, and like I said, going back, I did read it. I read it a few years ago. I went through a period of what I called my dystopian novel phase. I went through 1984, Fahrenheit 451, Animal Farm, did several books in a row. Because when I'm reading, and again, everybody knows this is a Christian podcast, but just so you know, I try to at least every three or four books that I read that are related to my faith, I try to read something outside the faith just to be able to engage with the culture. Again, this is part of the podcast, Scripture, Culture, and Media from a Reformed perspective, being able to engage with the culture and to see what the culture's thinking, what's going on around me. And sometimes I'll read a modern book, sometimes I'll read an older book. And then I was just intrigued by how much insight like Huxley and Orwell and those guys had looking to the future. And Huxley and Orwell both had a similar view of what was going to happen, and that was basically the loss of freedom. But they had a different way of getting there. Orwell was focused on the Big Brother aspect and the idea of the government sort of demanding that no one think different. And Huxley's was more, if I remember correctly, was more the idea that people would sort of do it to themselves. They would make themselves stupid and not want to read, and they wouldn't want to learn, and therefore it was sort of like the television. There was if I remember in Fahrenheit 451, there was like a program that everybody watched. And it was the dumbest thing. And the guy would talk about how it was nonsense, but everybody watched it. And that looked sort of like, it was, it's sort of like, you ever seen the Lego movie? Where are my pants? That it's like that. Like everybody watches this dumb show, but everybody is like sort of mesmerized by it. And the idea was that with Huxley's view, it was going to sort of be done. It wasn't going to be the government that did it. We were going to sort of do it to ourselves.
Well, I haven't read Fahrenheit 451, but given what you've said, it sounds like social media has done that.
Exactly.
So we have a mixture of the two going on, the government overreach, and we are dumbing ourselves down by the moment with these phones.
Absolutely.
As we stare into oblivion.
Yeah, because when I was a kid, back during the Cold War, yes, I lived in the era of the Cold War, but all we needed was Sylvester Stallone to make Rocky IV and Rambo II, and we won both Vietnam and the Cold War in both movies. So just so you understand, Sylvester Stallone was a one-man propaganda machine for Ronald Reagan.
He is a hero.
He was a hero. he Rambo II, he went and won Vietnam. Rocky IV, he went and won the Cold War. It was all over. We were champions. We were, as the Karate Kid says, the best around. Anyway, so I'm sorry, I'm all over the map. We didn't bring a script today.
No, we didn't.
But yeah, social media, the Huxley idea that we're going to do it to ourselves, I think about the Cold War, everybody was worried, our houses are going to get bugged. Everything's going to get bugged. And nowadays we buy bugs. We buy Alexa. It's like, hey, wiretap, give me a recipe for tuna salad.
Well, that ain't just the Alexa, man. I was talking to Crystal, my wife, yesterday about, what was it? Oh, security cameras. Just and talking to them, we're going to put some security cameras up on the new house because with my dad with Alzheimer's, make sure he don't wander off.
Yep.
And next thing I know, I pop my phone up, and one of the first ads in Facebook is for security cameras.
And you just mentioned it.
I just mentioned it. So yeah, they're always listening. The telescreen is functional.
What scared me is I've thought about stuff.
Like, yeah, it's like they're in your brain, man.
It's not even. I've been in a situation where it's like I didn't even say it. Like in my mind, I'm like, you know what? I really need some peas. Open it up, it's like green giant.
It's nuts, dude. I've had it happen too. I've been thinking about fishing, and all of a sudden I got an ad for jigs and stuff pop up. It's weird,
well, that
man.
one's a little bit more regular. If
Right.
those of you who don't know, Richard is the fisherman's fisherman. Him and Jack are
we fish a lot, yes,
yeah.
as much as possible. So.
Absolutely. Well, let's go back to talking about 1984 because usually I get off track. 1984 again. It's centered upon a single figure who's going through life under the thumb of Big Brother, and he's in the book narrates his thoughts because, as he says in the book, the only place that he has the ability to have any freedom is in his own brain.
A few centimeters inside of his skull. Yes.
Yeah, he can't speak anything. He can't talk to anybody. He can't trust anybody because there's always people around him that are willing to turn him over to Big Brother. In fact, that's a big part of the story. At a certain point, he thinks that he finds a group of people who are willing to go against Big Brother. He thinks that he finds this, and again, if you've never read the book, spoiler alert for a 50-year-old book, but
Right.
His book's 70 years old. We shouldn't have to put up a spoiler alert, but we will. And at a certain point in the book, he realizes, he's befriended O'Brien, this character, and him and this woman are going to become revolutionaries, and they agree to all these things, fighting back against Big Brother, only to find out that O'Brien, of course, is an arm of Big Brother. Spoiler alert, he's a bad guy, and it's a sad novel. It certainly doesn't end on a high note.
No,
it ends tragically. But ultimately, throughout the book, there's this idea that the only place that you have any freedom is within your own mind. There's no freedom to speak the truth. There's no freedom to question authority. There's no freedom to have any place where sense is the king. Sense is not the king. Common sense is what I mean. Is not the king. What is the king is Big Brother. And if Big Brother says that the wall is white, even if your eyes tell you that the wall is black,
you better say the wall is white.
That's right. You will say whatever Big Brother demands that you say. And it's interesting how that connects to, in a sense, a religious point, because years and years ago, there was a leader in the Catholic Church, and I can't think of his name right now. Maybe if you're a person who's up on your church history, maybe you can put this in the comments. But there was a leader in the Catholic Church, and he made the point that if the Catholic Church says that that something is, even if my senses say that it's not, I have to agree, because at that point the Catholic Church had established a certain level of authority where they were speaking on behalf of God. They were God's mouthpiece. Yeah, exactly. The Pope was God's infallible messenger, and so he said, and it's written. And when I teach my church history class, I actually quote him. I just can't. I want to say he was a Jesuit, and I can't just for the life of me think of his name. But basically, he said, if I see that something is white and the Catholic Church tells me it's black, then it's black. And so it's interesting how Orwell may have been drawing from some of these things, because he had an antipathy towards religion as well in his book, especially in Animal Farm, which I'm going to talk about in a little while. He has an opposition to the clergy and to religion because he saw that as an extension of this control. And I know many people who feel the same way. Many people who I used to have a dear friend. He wasn't a Christian, but he told me, he said, religion is all about control. It's all about mind manipulation. And so understand this, when we say Orwell was prophetic, we're not saying he was perfect, because he was not a believer that I know of. I don't think he ever became a believer. And so even though we're talking about him in a positive way, we're not saying he had it all together.
We're just saying that somehow, some way, he saw the writing on the wall of what little pieces he could see of what was going on and how it would grow. And either A, he's dead on the money and he's prophetic in that way, or B, the left is, well, not just left, but governments have taken that formula and grown it.
Yep.
One of the two was happening.
Absolutely. Well, what we did, we sourced some quotes from 1984, and we're just going to discuss how we see these quotes working out in our world. And where did we get the quotes from?
It's called bookriot.com.
Okay, bookriot.com. So understand, we didn't source these quotes. If there's any typing or any of these. We just drew these right from the website. If you want to go and actually look at the source of quotes, is bookriot.com, and just look up 1984. And we've picked 5. I think they had like 25
top quotes.
And we knew we were limited on time, so we weren't going to be able to go through all 25. We picked the ones that we felt like were most meaningful to us. And so as you're hearing these, just kind of understand that we're going to be picturing and pointing out some things about how we see these connected to where we are today. Because we live in a world where currently right now the top women's swimming champion in college swimming is a man. Man with who if you see the pictures of him in his bathing suit, it's apparent that he's a man and still very much a man, and yet he is the top women's champion. The head of is it our national defense? Who's the guy who looks like?
Yes, I believe it's. No, he's the.
like
he's over the health.
Looks like Ned Beatty with a wig.
He's over health. I can't remember exactly what his office is, but yes, he is a man pretending to be a woman.
Yeah, absolutely. And again,
he was given Woman of the Year this year.
I'm
not even kidding. He was given Woman of the Year this year. So they have. So the best woman in the world is a man. Is basically what they're saying. It's insanity.
The amazing part of that, just what you just said about that, is the feminists are quiet.
That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, is they're allowing this to go through because it fits into the narrative. It fits into the larger issue of pushing this agenda. And this is one of those times where we think Orwell was prophetic, because he was saying there's going to be a redefinition of terms. There's going to be an inability to speak against these things without being canceled. In fact, this very podcast may well get canceled because we've mentioned these things.
Yep.
I've had podcasts in the past where I've mentioned things and I have gotten warnings from YouTube, and I have gotten one at least that was taken off. And so it's very possible that this may not be around. This medium of communication may not be around forever because of that willingness. So, but without any further delay, let's go ahead and look at these quotes. And again, they're in no particular order, and I don't have the page number. So if you want to look these up, you'll have to do that on your own. But these are all taken from bookriot.com. The first quote is, this is how it goes. I'll read it out loud. And if all others accepted the lie which the party imposed, if all records told the same tale, then the lie passed into history and became truth. Who controls the past, ran the party slogan, controls the future. And who controls the present controls the past. Now, think about that for a moment. Think about just for a second what exactly is being said there, because it's saying that if you can manipulate the past, then you're controlling the future, because you're defining terms based upon a reinterpretation of the past. And you've probably, Richard, I'm certain you've seen guys who try to like reconstruct historical events and make them much different than what they were. We see that now.
Right.
There's a term for it. I can't think for. Is it
I'm not sure what the term is for it, but like an example of it would be taking what was going on with like the Civil War, taking the Civil War narrative and making it about slavery and making it about people of color and all that, when it had nothing to do with any of that. It had to do with the South wanting to secede from the Union, and the North didn't want that to happen. So, and then you have the beginning of this country. If you're white, you're a colonial. You're a colonizer.
Yeah.
They're reconstructing that to where, and it's going to create a division between white people bad and people of color good, because all white people want to do is colonize and destroy people of color and marginalize them and oppress them. And it's insanity when that's not what happened. Even with Christopher Columbus, yes, does he have some skeletons in his closet? Everybody does. But to just focus on that and forget anything good the man did, but that's exactly what's happening, reconstructing the past to control the future. Because if they manage to make this past change it to what they think it should be, then they can push that going forward to change the future to where they want it to be. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, you see it all over the place. This constant erasure of history, constructing their own history to progress an agenda for a future that they want, where, as we're seeing, there's all power and control, and you're only allowed to say certain things and do certain things. So,
and there's a term, and I'm sitting here trying to think, and it's
I
not somebody again in the
Reconstruction,
comments.
maybe? I don't know.
No, it's not Reconstructionism, but in the comments, if you know what the word I'm trying to think of, and this is one of the things I do sometimes, I can't think of a word. This actually happened to me in the pulpit.
Is it revisionist?
Revisionism. Thank you. Historical revisionism. Thank you. We nailed it. We got there. We got there. But that, again, go back to the quote. That's what this is. It's saying that if all records told the same tale, then the lie passed into history became the truth. The lie passed into history and became the truth. So, for instance, let's say, let's use an example that is allegorical and not.
Well, we can use an example from the book, because if I remember context here, he was working for wasn't he working
Ministry
for
of Truth.
Ministry of Truth, and if a newspaper article came across that they wanted changed, he would change it and then send the original into the box to be burned.
Yep.
So that's the extreme level where they're changing history in the present.
Fact checkers.
Right.
Again, what our goal today is to sort of connect it to what we're seeing in real life. And this, honestly, is I post things all the time that get these little fact checker things that come up. And the amazing thing that you see in those fact checker things is oftentimes you weren't wrong.
No.
They just want to call into question, and they'll say, well, this says this, and it's like, it says it was 1 million people, and it was actually 1,000,001. You know, it's something very minute.
One of the first ones that happened back, I don't remember if it was COVID or what it was, but one of the first ones that happened.
Close to the mic.
I'm sorry. One of the first ones that happened I seen where I had a fact check was there was I won't say it's conspiracy theory, but there was a concern that they were going to reduce. The government wasn't going to allow you to plant seeds. You couldn't garden. They didn't want you to garden for yourself.
Yeah.
And so there was a Walmart in Michigan, and the guy had it on video where they had completely shut off the entire gardening department where you couldn't buy anything from it.
Yeah.
Now, the guy was just making the point that you can't buy seeds here.
Lego Martin Luther is being offended by you knocking him out of the picture.
I am so sorry. But the
there you go, Lego Martin.
The whole video was him just saying, listen, they're not letting us buy anything from the gardening department. And the fact checkers popped up and said, this didn't happen. There's clear video of it happening. Yeah. But none of it literally said, this is not true. This didn't happen. They didn't shut off the gardening department. What are you talking about? It's clearly in the video.
Yeah, it's like I'm sorry, sir, your little pants are catching on fire.
Right,
it's liar, pants on fire.
And that was one of the more extreme examples. The rest of them are like what you're saying, little tiny nuances of the article. They'll say, a number wasn't quite right or whatever, but they're trying to make it seem anything that goes against the narrative. They want to make it seem like it's untrue and it's false, and you shouldn't even pay any attention to it.
Yeah. Now go back real quick. One last thing, and then we're going to get to the other quotes, I promise. But this is the last thing that this quote says. It says, "Who controls the past controls the future, and who controls the present controls the past." Well, who's in control right now? Mm-hmm. The people in control right now are the fact checkers. They're the ones who are making the decision as to what information you get. And it was proven in court that Facebook did have specific fact checkers whose purpose was to eliminate certain conversations, certain ideas, and certain thoughts. They did not want those thoughts out. If this is not the definition of Ministry of Truth and thought policing, then again, Orwell didn't see exactly how it would work out. He didn't, but he saw the idea. Idea, and it's certainly there. We'll go to quote number 2. Now, this is Winston, the main character of the book, having a thought and to himself. He says, "What can you do," thought Winston, "against the lunatic who is more intelligent than yourself, who gives your arguments a fair hearing and simply persists in his lunacy?" So again, to make that a little simpler, what do you do against the person who you make a solid argument? He understands your argument. He understands that it's correct, and yet still continues to deny it.
Well, there's if you wanted to go and read it, I think it was in Bonhoeffer's Letters from Prison where he talks about the danger of stupidity. that's clearly what he's talking about. A stupid person isn't someone that isn't intelligent. A stupid person is someone who denies basic reality and has no common sense. And they've been basically indoctrinated into that belief system. So and they're more dangerous than a malevolent evil person, because at least in a malevolent evil person, you can reason with either through reason and instruction or through punishment. I mean, people who commit crime, they go to jail, they get rehabilitated, they come out. Yes, there's a recidivism rate, but it's not 100%. Some people change. But the stupid person, like you said, and I'm just quoting how Bonhoeffer put it, the stupid person will literally scream his argument. You will counter the argument and blow his argument out of the water with facts and reality, and they will simply dismiss you and continue down their path, because in their mind, it doesn't matter what you say. My reality, my truth is my truth. There's your truth and there's my truth. And my truth trumps your truth all day, every day. And that's where we are. Your truth.
Yeah. Trump 2024. Sorry. That's a joke. He said my truth trumps your truth. And
okay. I got you. I see where you went
Trump
there.
2024. Okay. All right. Well,
I'm just saying what's being taught is just someone who denies the truth, period.
Yep.
And there's nothing you can do with that. That's
right.
Because you can't fight against it.
Yeah.
There is no weapon against that person.
And the thing is, and not to we could side conversation this and go for another hour, but that's on both sides. Those on the left, or those who are in the on the side that would be opposed to biblical Christianity, things like that. Mm-hmm. And it's not always conservative versus liberal. It really is. It's those who believe the Bible and believe the truth of the Scriptures, and those who don't. Those on the other side would say we're the ones who just don't look at the facts. We're the ones who don't believe the science. And so we have to understand that a lot of times there's a strong sense of self-righteousness, and this goes back to Orwell, because those people who were defending Big Brother, those people who were defending even the stuff they knew wasn't necessarily true, thought they had a greater goal in mind. Like for instance, you'll hear people talk about the whole greenhouse gases, carbon footprint thing, and they'll say, we know that this isn't really doing anything now. This isn't, but we've got to make changes. Therefore, we've got to hurt people so that the pain. I mean, think about what was recently said. Well, if you're having trouble paying for gas, go buy an electric car. Okay, I'm having trouble paying $4 a gallon for gas. I don't think I can pay $60,000 for a Tesla. Thank you very much. The idea that we're just going to put the pain. I mean, who's that guy on the evening show?
Trevor Noah, or
no, the Roman Catholic guy. He's very he's sort of well outspoken.
Oh, you talking about Colbert?
Yeah,
Stephen Colbert.
Colbert,
yeah.
He came out and he said, "I'm willing to pay a couple of extra dollars at the gas pump. In fact, I'm willing to pay $15 a gallon because I drive a Tesla." And he laughs and he walks off. And I'm thinking, if there was never a let them eat cake moment. That is the most aggressive let them eat cake moment in the history of modern media. And if you're not familiar with the let them eat cake, this is the reference where the Queen said, well, the people don't have bread. Well, if they don't have bread, let them eat cake. You know, the idea, if they don't have bread, well, just let them eat cake. Well, of course, because you're so disconnected from reality, you would look at somebody who's paying $4 a gallon for gas or is taking literally $1,200 to fill up a semi-tractor trailer to deliver the goods that you need, and you'd say, well, he could just drive a Tesla, because you can deliver thousands of pounds of goods with a Tesla.
Yeah,
sorry,
and
I'm getting a little passionate.
Well, and it's just it's easy for Stephen Colbert to say something like that from his ivory tower, because he's making several $1 million a year to host a television show. And even when in the height of COVID, when he was hosting it from his living room via Zoom or whatever he was doing, he still was making his millions of dollars. So he can go buy a Tesla like we buy milk at the grocery store.
Yeah.
And then when you're talking about let them eat cake, my first thought went to Nancy Pelosi standing in front of her $1 million darn ice cream freezer, eating her ice cream, talking about, this is how I deal with COVID. This is how I deal with being isolated. I go to the ice cream freezer and pop it open and open up these giant drawers that's just loaded with, she's got $1,000 worth of ice cream in there. And people are having trouble paying their bills and buying food because their businesses have been shut down.
This is not funny. And if you're watching the show and you see me laughing, I'm laughing at two things. One, Richard has a watch on, and every time he moves his hand, he's clicking the table.
No, it's my wedding ring.
Wedding ring. Okay.
Them dang wedding rings, boy.
But you also said the word "darn," and if there was if there was ever a Christian, we all have our Christian slangs. Well, shut the front door. Those are things that we say just as sort of, but there's dang, and then there's the
dern.
southern version of dang, which is dern. And
this is what happens when you bring a hillbilly redneck on your podcast.
He said her darn ice cream freezer. That was great.
Anyhow,
okay, at least we haven't lost our sense of humor.
There's your modern version of let them eat cake.
Yeah,
She's
exactly.
popping open the ice cream freezer.
All right, so number 3, quote, "We know that no one ever seizes power with the intention of relinquishing it." Now, I brought this one up specifically because I said this, and maybe I just was because I had read 1984 several years ago, and maybe this was just a reminder, but I remember when COVID hit. And I do believe, and I don't want to sound too conspiratorial, but I do believe the responses that we have seen to COVID, the power grab that came as a result, and whatever you feel like about the history of COVID, how it came about, and all that thing, independent of whether you believe it was man-made or accidental or any of those things, the point is, people in power saw it as an attempt to gain more power, and then they did not want to relinquish that power. We see that in the mask mandates. There are still places where you have to wear masks. By the way, this is going to be used by other people in the future. Yeah, I'm just saying. So don't spit into it. But
I'll finish the podcast like this now.
No, but these, the idea that we would have to wear a mask to sit this close to each other, that we couldn't even sit this close together, we had to social distance, we had to mask up, all of these things, we had to get vaccines, boosters, more boosters. At this point, it's a booster every few weeks or every couple months, and the idea is we don't want to lose control. We've been able to gain a certain amount of control. I remember going the first day that businesses were shut down. We were here doing some work at the church, and one of the guys at church, I wanted to take him out to lunch for the work that they had done, and we drive over to Arby's, which is just a few miles from here, and we walk in, and all the tables have the chairs up on the tables. And I looked at him and I said, "What in the world is going on?" And my buddy, he didn't know, and I looked at the lady. She goes, "The governor just shut down the state. We can't have people in restaurants anymore because of the pandemic." And I looked at my friend. I said, "Things will never be the same." And he thought I was being a little over dramatic, because I have a tendency to be a little dramatic, and I own that. But I said, this isn't me being dramatic. This is me being somewhat prophetic, because what I'm saying is when this level of power is exerted over a people, where they can demand this type of absolute obedience, no one can do anything without our say so. They will never give up that power, and we see that continuing. It's just moving on to other things. Now it's gone from the pandemic to the war in Ukraine. That's going to be the new thing that demands our allegiance and demands that we do certain things. And this is, again, going back to the gas thing. You're going to have to, you got to. They're talking about now having no drive Sundays.
Yeah, in Britain they just did that.
Yeah,
that's where I saw it first. Jordan Peterson popped it out there. He said, "I told you this was coming. It's use public transportation." And don't drive on Sunday, which is interesting. They don't want you to drive on Sunday.
Sunday, the Lord's Day.
The one day.
Yeah.
So that, again, against religion. And I'm interested if they're going to try it here. Now, I will say, at least here in Florida, we had a governor that, yes, he shut it down for a while, but he reversed that. And now he's done with COVID theater. So you do have one example of a man who, I don't think he took power to take power, because I don't think DeSantis is like that, because he gave it up. You see what I'm saying? He gave it back. But
sorry, that microphone is just
is in my way. But anyway, but yes, overall, it's seizing a crisis. They seized COVID to have some power over the people and force us to do certain things. And even Fauci now, with like this new variant coming out, he's come back on the scene, and Ted Cruz said something about him the other day. Come back on the scene talking about, well, we may need to go back to the restrictions.
No.
And I ain't having none of that.
Nah, bro.
I'm not having none of that. But it's amazing how quickly COVID just went away when this Russia thing happened. And now they're turning all their energy to using this to advance the green agenda.
That's it. That's it. It's all part of it.
It's all part of control. So,
all right. Well, we got 2 more quotes to get to, and then we're gonna begin to close up because we're running long here, so we're doing good. Let's see where we're at. Actually, we're only at 35 minutes. So we're doing good. We're doing good. All right. So, quote number 4: "You did live from habit that became instinct, in the assumption that every sound you made was overheard, and except in darkness, every moment scrutinized." And again, this is the character Winston who's describing the way he lives. He's saying you had to live with the instinct that everything that you said was being scrutinized. As we said earlier in the program, the only thing that you had that was yours was your thoughts.
And remember, in the book opens up with him, the first time he's in his apartment, he had found one spot that was out of the view of the telescreen to where he couldn't talk because you could hear him, but he was able to write.
Yeah.
And he wrote his thoughts down, but he was even fearful in doing that because if they ever invaded his apartment, which they could do at any moment in time, if they found that, he would become a non-person. Remember, they can make you an unperson. You would cease to exist. You would be removed from history.
Yeah.
Which leads us to what you see in our culture with this is the cancel culture.
That's right.
They're not going to make you a non-person, but they'll definitely make you non-relevant in a heartbeat. And with everything that's, like you said, with this very podcast we're doing, we could be flagged, earmarked, and your podcast be removed. Yep. And if I decided to do a fishing podcast one day with my name on it, and because I'm flagged here, I may be flagged there, and I'm only going to be able to do fishing.
Keep an eye out for that.
So
Jack and Richard's Wild Tales of the Sea coming at you.
Won't be the sea, buddy. I get seasick. It'll be the lake.
Produced by Keith Foskey.
But if we ever get there. Okay. But it's the cancel culture. I mean, look at what Kevin Hart, because of something 10 years ago, he got removed from the Oscars. People are dragging up stuff from way back in the day. I mean, Eddie Murphy had to apologize for his 1980s Raw special because he made remarks about gay people.
Yep.
You know, all this stuff.
Do you know? I know you know Steve Harvey. Mm-hmm. He did an interview with Jerry Seinfeld on Comedians with Cars.
Right. I remember Seinfeld doing that.
There was a great moment in that where he said to Seinfeld, he goes, "Yeah, I had to apologize for something I said." And Jerry said, "Well, why?" He goes, "Because I got a television show." He said, "And all it takes is me say something and the sponsors go away and I lose a television show." He said, "If it was just me on stage as a comedian, nah." I wouldn't have. So the apology wasn't genuine.
No.
It was just, I know I have to do this or else the culture will cancel me. Mm-hmm.
Because every moment of your life is now being scrutinized.
That's right.
And
I've said I don't know if I'd ever be able to get a job outside of some kind of ministry context or maybe a Christian school, because I have a degree in teaching. I don't know if people know that. My bachelor's degree is in social science with a minor in education.
Right.
So I could go and teach social studies. I could teach high school. What?
No, I'm just thinking. No, I'm thinking you teaching social studies. Yeah, you wouldn't be there more than about 2 months.
That's right.
And you'd be removed because you'd be teaching actual truth. Right.
Yeah, it would be really, really hard to go into that context and just be like, okay, I'm going to teach what the book says, knowing there's revisionist history, knowing there's things in there. And again, I'd become an unperson real quick, at least from the school's perspective. Mr. Foskey's
then you'd
gone.
only compound it by teaching it from a biblical worldview as well. When the
Reform perspective,
when the opportunity presented itself in class discussion.
That's right.
So yeah, you wouldn't last very long in this culture at all when that happens, especially since, as my daughter has pointed out in some of her classes in middle school and high school, this idea of transgenderism, all stuff, is already being accepted because these teachers are afraid to say anything about it because they're going to be fired. And there goes their pension, there goes their income, there goes their insurance, everything they got. Just like Steve Harvey said, if I was on stage, it wouldn't matter. That's why guys like Dave Chappelle can just say, bump y'all. Yeah. I'm going to say what I want to say because you can't cancel me because I'm not beholden to anyone.
Yeah.
But yes, that's exactly what's going on, and it's becoming increasingly to keep this, to add the biblical element and the Christian element, it's becoming increasingly difficult for Christians because in places where you have the totalitarian state, like Australia and Canada, you see these pastors are being shut down.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like their church is being fenced and they're being jailed because they refuse to go along with the narrative.
Yeah, in fact, somebody asked about this on the program, and again, thank you, listeners, and thank you for the Facebook group. Man, we got over 230 people on our Facebook group. We're doing great. You guys have really been great at sharing the content. Thank you for that. But one of the persons actually asked us to address. There was a situation, and I don't remember what country it is. I think it was Holland, but I could be wrong. But it was a pastor who was basically told they couldn't talk about sin at all. Was not able. And again, where the gospel without sin is no gospel because sin is the reason Christ came. The Bible says God made him who knew no sin to become sin for us that we can become the righteousness of God in him. If you don't have sin, you don't understand righteousness. If you don't understand righteousness, you don't understand the gospel. You don't understand why Christ came. So this whole idea of what's going on over there is just absolutely an affront to the gospel. So thank you again, listener, for sending that question. And our response would be, this isn't another example of totalitarian overreach. It's a 1984 situation where we're going to listen to everything you say, and when you say something that we do not approve of, you're gone. You're
either gone or you recant.
Yeah.
Because even Winston in the end of the book, he had an opportunity to recant. Now, required his face being stuck in a cage with rats. Yeah. If you don't say what we want you to say, I'm going to let the rats start eating your face. And the end of the book ends with basically Big Brother had won.
Again, spoiler alert.
I'm saying Big Brother had won because he now loved Big Brother.
That's right.
And that's the whole point of the book is you will comply.
That's right.
You will eventually, because you have no other choice.
And look at the and again, not to go on another side trail, but look at the preachers who are doing that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, who was I think it was Erwin Lutzer, and I could be wrong, but one of these guys, I think it was him, was on the steps of the Capitol in the whatever city he was in, calling out for for forgiveness for his white ancestors, for the sins.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And he's down on his knees pleading for forgiveness. And again, what are you doing? You're taking this unbiblical approach to repentance. You're taking this unbiblical approach to forgiveness. One of our elders, Brother Mike, did a series in Sunday school on the idea of forgiveness, and he really pointed out. He actually used a couple of really good examples of how, like there was a shooter. Some shooter shot someone and he died in the midst of it, and so the families of the victims like went to the mother of the shooter and was like, we forgive you. Well, she didn't do anything. What have we forgiven her for? And like gave her like a plaque or something like it was like this weird. And he used this as an example of we don't understand the concepts of forgiveness anymore. We don't even understand how that works and why. Where the transactional part of forgiveness. And again, I want to get into another category here, but this whole idea of how we are interacting with these issues, it's become nonsense. Newspeak is all around us because terms have changed, ideas have changed, thoughts have changed. We've gone away from the Christian model of right and wrong, the Christian standard, which is Scripture, and we've gone into this nonsense. And
personal responsibility has changed because I'm responsible for something somebody did 200 years ago.
That's right.
But
the person who does something wrong today isn't responsible for themselves.
That's the insanity of it all.
Yeah.
It's the absolute insanity of it all. Correct.
Yeah. All right, so here's our fifth and final quote for today's program. Not merely the validity of experience, but the very existence of external reality was tacitly denied by their philosophy. The heresy of heresies was common sense. I'll read it again. Not merely the validity of experience, but the very existence of external reality was tacitly denied by their philosophy. The heresy of heresies was common sense.
And this ties directly into the other quote from him about ignoring the evidence of your eyes.
That's right. It doesn't matter what.
That was the most essential command. You ignore the evidence of your eyes as the most essential command because reality isn't what reality is. Reality is what we tell you it is. Like you brought it up before, I think at the beginning of the program, the swimmer.
Yes.
We have clearly evident he was Will Thomas. He was ranked 400 and something in the men's swimming. He had no hope of ever being a champion. So what does he do? He decides, well, I'm a woman now. Goes over there, changes nothing. I do believe he's on estrogen therapy. So he's
And his times have gone down since being on estrogen therapy, but he's still
miles ahead of any woman in the field.
Yeah.
Because there is, and I hate to say it, and we may get canceled for this, there is a difference between men and women physiologically.
Oh,
and there's
my
a
goodness.
reason for that. There's a God-given reason. God made men to be the protectors. They're stronger. They're more agile. I'm sorry, that's just the way we're built, to protect and lead our wives, our children, the whole 9 yards. We're to be the protectors of our family. Therefore, you're going to have a difference in physical ability. Hello. And women are to be the carers and the nurturers of their children and the helpmate to their husband. That's the way God designed it. So naturally, if you put it into a physical competition, and see, here's the other thing that was brought up, that somebody brought up, it's like, I don't see any women transition into men trying to compete in men's sports.
Yeah, it ain't like Necessary Roughness where you put a girl on a team and she wins the game.
And it's not like she's just a kicker.
Yeah. Necessary
there ain't no
Roughness,
girl strolling onto a football team trying to be the wide receiver.
Or the left tackle.
Or the left tackle or any of that, because now there are some cases I've seen, like some female power lifters, but they're very masculine female power lifters. I don't know if they're like juicing or something. There are exceptions to the rule, but overall, if you take any girl athlete who played soccer and you put her on a football field with a 260-pound man. Let's take Jordan Davis, who played. I know you don't follow sports, but Jordan Davis, who plays. I'm throwing all these names out there. You have no idea what I'm talking about. Jordan Davis was.
I know every iteration of Superman.
I know. Jordan Davis played for the national champion Georgia Bulldogs. He was a defensive lineman. He weighs like 340 pounds. Beast. Ran the 40-yard dash in 4.7 seconds. That's which fast. Is just, 4.4 and 4.2 is like world-class speed. Okay. So he ran at 4.7 seconds at 340 pounds or 300-something pounds. That's a lot of man moving at a fast pace of speed. Mm-hmm. Now, let's put 130-pound Julia playing running back coming through the offensive line, and she gets plowed. I'm just being real, folks.
This poor microphone.
I know. She just gets plowed by 340-pound Jordan Davis.
Yeah, she's going to.
Nobody in their right mind would let that happen.
Yeah.
Because it would be dangerous for the young girl to be on the field with those class athletes. Why are we allowing men jump into women's sports and dominate them? There's a rugby player or something in Austria. He's like 6'2", 240 pounds, playing football. Their version of football with girls and beating the dog mess out of them.
And same thing.
And we're allowing it.
Same thing happened in MMA. Now we bring back
Fallon Fox
crushed the skull,
just shattered her orbital bone. There's no reason this person should be in the ring with them.
Everybody
fighting.
with common sense knows that that's wrong.
Right.
And I'm gonna say this: if you're watching this program and you're in your mind, you're saying, "I can defend." William, Leah, whatever. I can defend him swimming against girls. No, you can't. No, you can't. You can make an argument, but it doesn't change reality. And you, in the realm of Orwell, you're on the side of those who would say we're going to trust this ridiculous thing rather than our common sense.
And you're going to be forced to deny the evidence of your eyes. Otherwise, you're a bigot. You're hateful, you're racist, misogynist, whatever you want to be, whatever label they want to throw on you, because you refuse to reject the evidence of your eyes.
That's right. Well, I want to start to. I'm going to draw us to a close. I'm going to switch over real quick. I know you and I both are Animal Farm. You've read it.
I've read it.
And it's, as I said, my favorite. And the only reason I want to switch to Animal Farm is I mentioned earlier that Orwell was not a religious, he was not a Christian. He was, and in the book Animal Farm, I actually talk about this a lot, and I know this sounds weird. I actually mention this at funerals a lot. I do a lot of funerals, and especially if I'm in a group of people that I don't think are believers, I will tell this story because I'm trying to get them to understand that the things that I'm saying are true, And so I want to connect them to something that maybe will cause them to really think through what I'm saying. So I say my favorite book outside of biblical books is a book called Animal Farm. And older people will be like, "Hey," and young people are like, "What's that?" Animal Farm. Sound like kids. Is
that about a zoo?
Yeah. And I say in the book there are all of these animals, and they're all given human characteristics. There's Conrad Napoleon, who is Conrad Napoleon, who's the head pig, and he's the one who everything's sort of centered around him taking control and how he rises to power. And then there's Snowball, and there's these other characters. But there's one particular character who is a raven, and I tell this story this way: the raven would fly over the other animals, and he would come and tell the animals about Sugar Candy Mountain. Sugar Candy Mountain was the place that only he could see because only he could fly. And he could come and tell them about Sugar Candy Mountain, which was the place where if you were a good, strong, working animal, that you would die and you would go to Sugar Candy Mountain. And here's the thing, the irony is that the animals knew that it was a lie. And the raven knew it was a lie. But it was a happy, hopeful, pie-in-the-sky view of the afterlife that kept the animals working hard and moving forward. You see, that's the way Orwell looked at religion. He looked at religion as a great lie because the raven's name was Moses. And so the raven represented the clergy. He represented those who say God is going to be there when we die, and there's a promise of heaven for those who work really hard, which of course is not the Christian message at all. The Christian message is heaven is for those who repent and place their faith and trust in Jesus Christ. But the point of it is, today, this is another place I think Orwell has been tremendously prophetic, because today many people look at the church and the promises of the church as nothing more than pie in the sky. They look at it as nothing more than a false hope. And therefore, why do I need to invest in something that ultimately is not true? And when I do funerals, I compare this to John 14, where Jesus said, "I go to prepare a place, and if it were not so, I would have told you." I say Orwell says it's not true, and we all know it. But Jesus said, not only is it true, but if it weren't true, I would have told you. But think about how Orwell is affecting the minds of people. How many people do you know that just think all of religion and all of Christianity is just fake? It's just pie in the sky.
I got a couple family members that way that are almost violently opposed to Christianity. One, because they think it's pie in the sky. We're all just, when you die, that's it.
Yeah.
You just cease to exist. One, and two, and I think we mentioned this before earlier in the program, is religion is a means of control.
That's right.
It's the conservatives.
That's how they see it. I say that's right. That's their view. Yeah.
It's the conservatives. You only want to control what people can do, and you want to use the Bible as a means to restrict people.
Yeah.
And
but where's the control really coming from today? It's coming from the left. It's coming from those who say, you can't say this is wrong. You can't say that it's wrong for a boy to swim with girls. You can't say that it's wrong for a man to dress like a woman. You can't say that because there's nothing wrong.
Well, that's been their driving force from day one. Is they want to throw out the accusation that all everybody else wants is control, while at the same time doing the very thing that they're opposing.
That's right.
They do that constantly. Another, and I know your point with the raven is about religion, and that was Orwell's thing. But while you were talking about that, and I agree with that 100%, that was his viewpoint. But since Animal Farm is centered around, communist, socialist, and again, there's some that disagree with that, there's also this element of the utopian lie.
That's right.
Socialism leads to everybody's equal. Everybody is just this grandiose splendor. Everybody's going to be happy, and we're going to live in this utopian society. But instead of everybody throwing it out with religion as a false hope, they believe this is going to happen because we haven't tried it the right way here. Everywhere else has been tried. It's ended in tragedy. Venezuela and China, you name it, it's happened. Yeah. Millions of people have died under that system. because it becomes a totalitarian dictator state.
He was trying to say dictatorial.
There you go. Redneck. But they think if we try it here, it's going to turn into this, everybody's going to be sitting around singing Kumbaya, everybody's got the same stuff, everybody's equal across the board, and it's never going to happen because the only people that are going to have everything is like Animal Farm turns out. What were their initial thing? They wanted to get rid of the farmer because the farmer was the dictator.
That's right.
And ultimately, the pigs became the farmer.
Yeah.
And everybody else was living in squalor because it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So... Anyway.
Well, one day I'm going to have you back on the program, and we're going to talk about how the same thought actually comes from your favorite television show, Star Trek.
Oh, boy.
As Gene Roddenberry created the perfect society.
This is true.
Which was ultimately a socialist nightmare. And I'll show you why on the next program.
And I know where you're going because Miss Stacey Abrams had a cameo on Star Trek, one of the new Star Trek shows.
Actually, I wasn't going there, but that is true. But the point is,
United Earth, right?
The idea of shows like that, and again, I think we could do another program on this. Shows like that are pointing toward a future where everybody thinks the same, and because they've created a utopia. And
there's no currency, there's no money, so you don't have that, and everybody works for the joy and the pleasure of doing it.
That's right. That's right.
So I got you.
All right, guys. Well, this is going to bring us to the end of today's program. Richard, thank you for being on the program.
And I will say this. I will get training in how not to hit the microphone before the next podcast.
Also, I want to thank Crystal Rhoden, Richard's lovely wife, for donating this nice table. I was using a big white kind of ugly table, but she donated this nice table, which belonged to her grandfather.
And grandmother, yep.
And he actually sat and had many meals at this table, and so I'm thankful to have a nice, heavy, sturdy wooden table to hook our microphones to and to be in the program, and I'm just grateful for that, and I'm thankful for you being with us on the program today. And tell Crystal we all say thank you.
Will do, and it's been a pleasure, bro.
Yes, sir. Again, if you have questions or topics you would like for us to deal with on the show, or if you'd like for me to have Richard back or not, please send me an email at calvinistpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening to Conversations with a Calvinist. My name is Keith Foskey, and I've been your Calvinist. May God bless you.